Well, good evening, everyone. Sego ani buju endio wachea kwe kwe. As the mayor of the city of Kingston, I offer these words in the spirit of this gathering. Let us bring our good minds and hearts together as one to honor and celebrate these traditional lands as a gathering place of the original peoples and their ancestors who were entrusted to care for Mother Earth since time immemorial. It is with deep humility that we acknowledge and offer our gratitude for their contributions to this community, having respect for all as we share this space now and walk side by side into the future. Okay, so we were meeting as council in Committee of the Whole closed meeting. We did discuss several items with respect to the pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, the Limestone District School Board. We discussed employment lands, the OLT appeal for 4085 Bath Road, and collective bargaining with QP Local 109. So I will ask for a motion to rise without reporting, please.
Moved by Councillor Amos, seconded by Councillor Chinani, that council rise from the Committee of the Whole closed meeting without reporting.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Next, we have the approval of the addeds. I believe we just have some communications. Can I have a mover and a seconder for the addeds, please? Moved by Councillor Toza, seconded by Councillor Stephen. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Are there any disclosures of potential pecuniary interest? Councillor Stephen.
I, Wendy Stephen of the Corporation of the City of Kingston, declare my pecuniary interest in the matter of closed session item A, as I am an employee of the Limestone District School Board.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no other declarations of pecuniary interest, then we will move on in our agenda. We have no presentations this evening, but we do have several delegations. So first, I will invite Emma Lambert from Tourism Kingston to appear before council to speak to new motion number 1 regarding the cricket field at 32 Bagot Street. And just a reminder to all of our delegations, you have up to 5 minutes to speak. And then we will open up the floor to questions from members of council. Ms. Lambert, welcome, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson, members of council, and city staff. My name is Emma Lambert, Manager of Sport Partnerships with Tourism Kingston. I'll be speaking this evening from a sport tourism perspective of the motion to council to revisit the plan for cricket fields. At this site, we now have a state-of-the-art sport infrastructure so recently built. A project that required the City of Kingston to invest over $1 million and 1,000 staff labor hours. I say with confidence that removing the outfield fence would significantly decrease both the value and utility of this revitalized field. With our present-day strategies in place for tourism and sport development, it's important we evaluate the opportunity this significant sport investment presents our community moving forward. Now, I know there are folks here this evening from our local baseball community, some of whom you'll hear from in just a short while. Their support for this motion is matched by enthusiastic voices across our city who give so much to our local sport community and who want to see this field remain intact. Now, we know cricket fields is a sport facility with an incredibly long and important history, and it remains a living legacy. It continues to serve our community as a regular home for youth baseball, and with an outfield fence, it's a stage on which to welcome the nation's very best young athletes. Now, when the opportunity first came up through the Kingston Baseball Association, or KBA, to host a national championship in 2024, the City of Kingston and Tourism Kingston jumped on board because of the direct alignment with our integrated destination strategy. Specifically, Section 25 of the IDS outlines the need for investment in sport facilities as community assets that benefit our local sport clubs and provide significant hosting opportunities for our city. Removing the fence would be to take a step backwards. It would pull Kingston from future hosting considerations in the eyes of Little League Canada. Right now, with the fence, the field new and ready as it is, we have a massive competitive advantage. I must say we are the envy of my sport tourism counterparts in other communities with this facility. It's the newest Little League field in Canada and has put Kingston on the map as a premier host destination for major baseball tournaments, as well as providing a safe sport space for our local athletes, some of whom are here tonight. Our local athletes can now be proud to play at home here in Kingston. I mean, the most recent case study we have, of course, is this summer's successful Little League Championships. It generated over $2 million in economic impact. Yet it wasn't just a successful sport event, it was an integration of community assets. We activated hotels and restaurants and attractions. I think all of us enjoyed seeing the bright red trolleys filled with young baseball players traveling through the city, taking players from games to practices to Kingston Pen tours to their accommodations at Queen's. We celebrated heritage with ceremonies throughout the tournament. We hosted past builders, integrated local music, and trained new sport volunteers. KBA even took the opportunity to host the first Little League girls matchup in the region, a springboard for the growth of girls baseball here in Kingston. Our community showed up, and as a result, we've been shortlisted to host the U13 version of this national championship next summer. This city shone through the tournament, and this will not happen again if we don't keep the outfield fence in place. So currently this field with this fence, we have the opportunity to host a number of significant events outlined here that would drive a potential $5 million in economic impact each and every year over the 6-month period that this field can be in use. Now it's important to highlight that these events will come to life entirely on the backs of local volunteers from the baseball community, and they are willing to take on this work. The least that we can do as a city is ensure that we keep this state-of-the-art field intact so that these events can take place. Now, the main user group of the field and the volunteers behind this summer's Canadian Championships is KBA. I ask Council to join me in trusting and encouraging the Kingston Baseball Association as they demonstrate continued good governance, capacity for growth, commitment to girls' sport, and, lucky for Kingston, a willingness to give thousands and thousands of hours to host these major events. Now, in my portfolio with Tourism Kingston, we maintain a facility guide that outlines our sports assets, and currently on the baseball front, we are stronger than ever before. Of course, a gold standard baseball diamond looks different in 2024 than it did in 1872 when the first game was played at Cricket Field. But by keeping this outfield fence, we can ensure that Cricket Field's value and place in our community continues to stand the test of time. I greatly appreciate your consideration of this matter, and I'd be more than happy to take questions before you hear from KBA directly. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Glenn.
Thank you, Ms. Lambert, for your presentation and for explaining how well the tournament went. My one pressing question for you, though, is how did we manage to win this baseball tournament when we didn't even have a field suitable for play? And we're contending now that we must keep the field fence up to win other tournaments.
I mean, it was before my time in this role, certainly, but in 2019, and I think this is a good reason for the motion this evening to really enable further community consultation. I think we look back at 2019 when the bid to host this tournament was first submitted. That goes to Little League Canada. It was supported by the city at the time, our council at the time, I should say, Tourism Kingston at the time, and was led, of course, by the Kingston Baseball Association. And we were selected on the premise that Cricket Field would be explored and then invested in, as the city chose to move forward with, to host this tournament. I would say that's pretty standard practice when it comes to sport hosting, on the premise that sport events enable communities to invest in infrastructure. The fact that we hosted the tournament this summer means that we now have the state-of-the-art Little League field, the newest and currently best in Canada. That was made possible because of that investment that was decided upon in 2019. I think the reason to revisit it now is that certainly the sport landscape has changed. There's, of course, I think consideration to be made for what the process was at the time. I think we could all review that and potentially move forward differently in the future when it comes to having these different parties at the table. But I think 5 years have passed. We know that times have certainly changed. I think in your district, Councillor Glenn, there's new concerns from the community that perhaps didn't exist in 2019. Perhaps they weren't consulted to the level that they should have been in 2019. All the more reason, I think, to pass this motion and do that important work now. From a sport perspective, certainly with volunteer attrition, with sport facilities not in the same state that they used to be, there's a need to, I think, revisit this and really leverage this opportunity that we had to host this tournament and the legacy that can be left moving forward. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Chase.
Thank you. Just to further on that question, is it normal practice for cities or countries to bid on certain events such as World Cup or Olympics, say, without the actual facilities, but when they actually win the bid, then they actually are building the facilities to match what the needs are?
Certainly, yes. I would say that is extremely common in that a proposal would need to be put forward outlining what the fields of play will look like. Once the bid is secured, then that's when the investment comes in the sport infrastructure and partners come to the table.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other questions, Ms. Lambert, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll now move to our second delegation. We'll invite Tori Boschart to speak to council, again with respect to new motion number 1 regarding the cricket field at 32 Bagot Street.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson, members of council, and city staff. Thank you for allowing me a few moments to speak to you today. I'm here to advocate for maintaining the outfield fence at our beloved cricket baseball field. This fence is not merely a physical boundary, it is an integral to the functionality and spirit of our field for several compelling reasons. Before we discuss those reasons, I aim to give you some background on the growth of our club that we've experienced over the past few years. For the past 10 years, we are seeing growth and have recently recognized a need for development in our girls' game. With a focus on inclusivity, we have focused on bringing in diverse role models, engaging community involvement, and creating a supportive environment for our players to learn not only baseball skills, but the principles of Little League: fair play, sportsmanship, positivity, and teammanship. As you can see by the increase in the amount spent each year with the City of Kingston, we are booking as many fields as possible to try to accommodate as many players as possible, with more space needed this year and beyond to support the growth of our girls' game especially. By losing cricket field for the past 2 years while it was being renovated, we had wait lists in almost every division that we have, forcing us to turn away players, which we hate doing. Prior to the renovation of cricket field, both diamonds were booked by KBA 5 to 7 days per week from May until October, and used a variety of different divisions. This was still the case, even though the field was not set to a proper size. It was sized at a 60-90 base path and pitcher's path, and players over the age of 14 really couldn't use that space due to the amount of area. It would hinder the houses, the roads, cars, and the nearby park. The outfield fence provides a clear, defined boundary that ensures player safety. Without it, balls hit beyond certain points can lead to injuries, as players and spectators would be exposed to unpredictable bounces, potential accidents. The fence also ensures a level playing field, preventing balls from rolling into the areas that are uneven. If you know the field at all, in the left field, out past the fence line, there's considerable slope there, which does come into play for the players. The fence contributes to the overall aesthetics of the field, giving it a professional look that boosts community pride. It creates a space where families and friends can gather and enjoy the game in a setting that feels both organized and welcoming. A well-maintained fence enhances the field's appeal and makes for a more attractive venue for tournaments and local events. While there are a number of baseball diamonds across the city, there are ongoing challenges with each of those spaces, especially to host a tournament of this size and magnitude. The other fields are not up to the standards for a provincial or national hosting and see teams traveling from out of town. Maintaining the outfield fence is a wise long-term investment. It helps provide the field's usability and value over time. By ensuring the fence is kept in good condition, we avoid potential costs associated with repairs and modifications that might be needed if the fence was removed. Moreover, it allows us to continue with hosting provincial and Canadian championships. After the success of the 2024 Canadian Little League Championships, we have been approached for hosting a variety of different championships in 2025. and so on. Kingston is widely recognized as a beautiful, historic city. The Little League organization is steeped in tradition and history. Founded in 1939, it has become a global phenomenon with millions of kids participating in over 80 countries. It focuses on fostering a sense of community and camaraderie. With this new field and fence, our local Little League players now have a high-quality field to train and compete.
30 seconds.
What better way to honor a long baseball history at Cricket Field than to maintain it as a baseball facility to the highest standard of the game and benefit the youth in our community? Cricket Field has a rich history and a tradition within our community. The outfield fence is a part of that tradition, symbolizing countless games, memories, and local pride. Keeping it intact honors its history and supports the continuity of cherished community asset. In conclusion, preserving the outfield fence is not just maintaining a physical structure, but also upholding the safety, enjoyment, and tradition of a baseball field.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, we'll open up to questions from council. Councilor Rich.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Thank you so much for the presentation. I really do appreciate it. I was just wondering if I could just look at the growth for your organization for a moment. I believe it was the second slide, potentially the third. Okay, that's it. Awesome. So one thing that I always love to see is to see young people getting involved in these types of recreational activities. And clearly we can see from the growth of the organization that that is the case. 47 female registrations jumping to 171 girls. Fantastic. Well done. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? Councilor Glenn.
Thank you very much for your presentation and for all the hard work that you put in getting the tournament here. I have a couple of quick questions. So back to those numbers that we're looking at right now. What were your numbers like pre-pandemic? Because I know that that's been a challenge when we look at numbers, seeing the recovery versus what it was prior to that. Do you have those handy? If not,
I don't have them specifics. I can send them to you, but I do know a rough number. So back in 2012, we were down to 76 players in our league total. And from there, it was continual growth. So every year we saw growth until we got to 2018. It dipped by 22 players, and then it continued to grow again. Even through COVID, we sustained our numbers and grew, which was, it was a feat on its own, really. So, yeah, we've shown a continual growth over the years.
okay, thank you. And can you tell me how long your baseball season is?
Yeah, so games begin in May, the 1st of May. As soon as the fields open up from the city, we get out there. We're usually on the turf fields in April with tryouts and preseason training. And then games begin in May, and we're still running games now. We have a tournament this weekend. So we run as late as the city allows the fields to be open, which this year we're being told October 15th.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
No problem.
Councilor Son.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. If the city decided to move that fence and not have that field for the young players, how is it going to affect their activities in this age, and how is it going to affect the organization and those players? How difficult will it be for them to go somewhere else and play?
Well, with or without the fence, we would still use that field every day for some reason. It would definitely affect the tournament level that we're able to host. I think that's really the biggest key. There would be no provincial tournaments, and there would be no national level tournaments without that fence, unfortunately.
So, follow-up question, and the last time you guys host the championship or the league, how many people approximately came to Kingston with those players to watch the game, or how it was impacted to economy?
So for the Canadian Championships, we had 7 teams from across Canada, and their families and supporters were all here. Emma could probably speak more to those numbers and the amount of hotels that were booked throughout. The thing that makes a Little League tournament kind of special is how long it runs. So that tournament ran from July 28th through August 8th. So that's 10 days of families being here and supporting the local community.
Supporting our economy.
Yeah.
Okay, if there are no other questions, thank you both very much. Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Osterhoff, I had you on the list and I forgot. Yeah, go ahead.
No problem. Thank you, Mayor Patterson. Yeah, thanks for that presentation. It's done really well, and great work on your behalf and so many others. How quick, maybe I should know the answer to this, but I don't. Are there fields in Ontario that they can put the fence up quickly for tournaments, or don't know if that's possible? Like, I understand why it's so important. I love the game too, but I don't know, have you seen that there where you can prepare for a tournament in like a couple days, or like, does that happen?
I've not.
No.
No.
You don't know,
Not
eh?
a couple days for sure.
Okay, I don't know.
There is such thing as temporary fencing. Temporary fencing is very costly.
Okay.
I know that at one point in the planning process, it was explored, they looked into it, and I think was quickly rolled out because of the cost.
Okay.
And it does take a lot of manpower to put up and down on a daily basis, so.
Safe storage was another concern as well.
Yes, understood. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson.
Okay, I don't think I've missed anybody else. Thank you. So thank you both very much. Okay, we'll now go to our third delegation. We'll invite David Gordon to speak to council again with respect to new motion 1 regarding the cricket field.
Good, we're here. Thank you, Your Honor. I'm Dave Gordon. My family live at 67 Sydenham Street in downtown Kingston. I was one of the people who attended most or not or all of the many and long negotiations about the design of the baseball diamond in 2022. We've had lots of negotiations with the community already. My family have lived within a couple of blocks of the cricket field for the past 30 years. Our daughter attended the adjacent Sydenham Public School, and where I was a parent coach, and we have detailed knowledge of the use of the cricket field because we walk or cycle by it every day. My wife was the chair of the Parents Association for Sydenham Public School. So this context, cricket, baseball, and fastball have been played on this site for over 150 years, never with an outfield fence. This field is the only public playing field in downtown Kingston. It serves 25,000 or more local residents. It's heavily used for an astonishing variety of activities, 12 months a year. I've seen softball, cricket, baseball, fastball, football, frisbee, Quidditch, kite flying, rugby, golf, yoga, cross-country skiing, school events, summer camps, snowshoeing. There are family picnics there on the cricket field. There's dog walking by people who clean up, and people just enjoying lounging on the large green space. The park's used every day, 12 months of the year. Now this this field has been the playing field of the adjacent downtown Sydenham Public School since 1853. It's the place where the kids in this school, because the school has no yard, no playing field. It's where the 120 kids in this school use as their play field every day. There's an adjacent school, the other downtown school called Cathedral is 2 blocks north. They use the school, but not as frequently. This is the place where Simon Whitfield learned to run before he won his gold medal in triathlon. It's a place where kids have played soccer for over 100 years. And a large part of this play field at Barry and Court Street that was formerly used by the schools is now fenced, locked, and gated and inaccessible to the children of the community because the outfield fence, which was agreed to be removed, has not. Pupils returned this morning, everybody's happy, but I don't know where they're going to play to the same extent. Here was the deal. former baseball field was plopped in the middle of the park in a not great location, but the cheapest place you can build it at the time, the flattest and cheapest place. It had a long outside porch, but a short porch on the right field. I could easily hit the 200 feet to that side. The deal was that the cricket field with all the baseball diamond with all the extra apparatus that's attached to it takes up a lot more space. And instead of plopping it in the center of the thing, very clever work by your staff, we dragged it back to the bottom corner and tucked it into the corner just like the fastball field at the top so that the two fields could be shared. Now we lost the playing field or the playing area that was between Berry Street and the Diamond. But the loss of that was made up for by a larger central area that will be shared in the future. We willingly gave that up. We willingly gave up the use of our public park for over a year and a half while it was in construction and fenced off, on the condition that the fence would be removed afterwards so that we would have a larger space in the middle that was usable by all.
30 seconds.
So could, a larger space for the community to use, for the maybe cricket to return, and the agreement, we supported this, and there was a sign put up on the site from the city recognizing the agreement so the community wouldn't complain. And if the Little League wants to have a fence, or if people want to have a fence, this is in the wrong place. It's at 200 feet.
Okay.
If we wanted to have a full baseball field, we should have a longer,
Thank you,
we should
sir.
be marking it.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any questions from council? Councilor Tozo.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. Through you, just a question for the delegation. Do you currently use the field for any extracurricular activities or any alternative leagues?
Absolutely. The school uses.
Do you currently use it?
Oh yeah. No, I go but in fact, there is my bike on the field on the way home. We run people's dogs. I've shagged flies on this diamond for kids in the neighborhood. So the field's in very frequent use. Last week, I saw a family trying to use the Little League field. The fence is this high, trying to lift their kids over the fence because it's locked and padlocked. Nobody's allowed in. And they couldn't, so they ended up using the fastball field instead.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, and next is Councilor Sanik.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wonder that in 2022 or maybe 2021, when you were having the discussions with staff and Sydenham District Association, were there representatives there from the Little League? And they were aware that the fence would be temporary?
Yes, the staff were negotiating with the Little League, who wanted the fence to be there afterwards, but they understood that the deal was that it be removed. So we're kind of disappointed, more than disappointed, we're really angry that the school year has started up again and we haven't got our school playing field back.
Thank you. And my second question is, I know that you're a planner, like an official planner with Queen's University and whatnot. Do you think having the fence there will affect just the overall, feel of Sydenham District being like a heritage conservation district?
What's wonderful about the cricket field is it's a large green space framing the courthouse, and the baseball diamond being moved further into the corner enhances that. Except for the fact that suddenly there's a 4-foot fence with yellow thing cutting across half the field. So that makes it worse. But if the fence was not there, except when there's a tournament on, then the heritage aspects of of the park would be there, but it's just better park design. You don't design a downtown playing field park for just one use. This space, you can see how worn the grass is in the other place, is used for all kinds of things, all during the year, way past the amount of time that the Little League uses it for. So to make it exclusively a facility for one thing and not let the public in for the rest, that's a really bad park design. And we don't support that at all.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Stephen.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson, through you. Thank you. Just one quick question. How would you feel about the park or the field itself if the lock didn't exist there?
It would still cut the area available for playing by about a third, and the fence is quite visually intrusive from all the other direction. The fence is removed. It's going to be like the softball diamond on the other side. It'll barely be visible, the fact that there's a baseball diamond in the corner. And of the city's $1 million investment in the thing, it's only the $5,000 or $7,000 in that outfield fence is the part that's removed. Everything else we're perfectly happy to have remain. The dugouts, the pitching areas, the bleachers, all those things that take up so much of the rest of the park don't have to be removed at all. And if there is a tournament again in the future, we'd be perfectly happy if there was the fence was put up again temporarily. And I offered to contribute the first $1,000 towards the price of a temporary fence, which we costed at less than $10,000. So if you want one that you can put up whenever you need it, they're available and used in baseball diamonds all around North America. This is a bad decision, bad park planning.
Okay. Councillor Glenn.
Thank you, and through you. Thank you for your presentation, Dave, and for talking to us about park planning a bit. So, given your background, can you give us a little bit of explanation on, having an open space and what travel's like across there? I know that you've talked about biking through it and people traverse the park. And what does that fence do in terms of just natural walking through a park, which is part of what a park exists for?
Well, you can see it cuts one of the paths that people use just from this slide above. But more important, it's a visual intrusion that stops you from walking in many different directions across it, and would stop you from playing on the park too. So it's really too bad that would happen, and it's just not good design.
Okay, thank you. And just one last question. In terms of how the park actually feels to the people who live there and the use of the people on an everyday basis, how does that change it with the fence still up?
We feel like we're being excluded from our neighborhood park. It's equally bad if our school suggested, for example, that we want to put up permanent soccer nets, because it's used more months of the year for soccer than it is for baseball. We were going to put up permanent soccer nets that'll block the outfield for Little League use. That would be bad planning too. But we would never suggest it. We'd bring our pylons out and take them away at the end of the game.
Okay. There are no other questions. Councillor Shaves, go ahead.
If I recall correctly, and thank you for your presentation, you mentioned that the school year starting, that the school's not using that green space there. Is that correct?
We can't get in.
But is there not a green space between the old ballpark, the new ballpark, and the fence? It seems about the same size as it was before because it was pushed back. So there is green space there. I'm just trying to figure out why the school's not using that green spaces between the two ball diamonds.
Well, as you can see above, 1/3 of it is cut off. Oh, you can't see. There I am. The slide I have in front.
It's back up.
Yeah. You can see there's a big piece of it moving. Now remember, there was a second green space that everybody was using that was beside it. And that's no longer usable at all because it's got all the apparatus from the ball diamond that's been slid down into it. So the deal was we would give up the second green space for a bigger central one. And now the deal's gone back on, and we're instead of getting a bigger green space, we get a smaller one with a fence that runs across the middle of it.
Okay, I understand that, but you stated that you can't use the green space because there's locks on the ball diamond, but there's still green space between the two diamonds. That's where I'm confused.
We were hoping to get something big enough to play a proper game of soccer, which was there before, and something big enough to play cricket in the future too, and all kinds of other things, because you just have the good park design, you have a large central green sward of grass that can be used for all kinds of different things. You don't put a permanent fence down the middle of it. It's bad park planning.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. If there are no other questions, Mr. Gordon, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Okay, so before we go any further, I will ask if there are any other delegations that are to be added. Councillor Ridge?
Thank you, Worship. Through you, I'm adding Mary Farrar, or requesting Mary Farrar be added as a delegation.
Okay, moved by Councillor Ridge, seconded by Councillor Stephen, that our procedural bylaw be waived to allow Mary Farrar to speak to council with respect to Clause 2, Report Number 77, from the CA with respect to the Employment Area Lands Review. I will call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Any other delegations? Councillor Glenn?
I'd like to add Martha Vosper to speak to motion number 1.
Okay, moved by Councillor Glenn, seconded by Councillor McLaren, that we waive our procedural bylaw to allow Martha Vosper to appear before council to speak to new motion number 1. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Are there any other delegations to add? Okay. Seeing none, then we will, at this point, I'll invite Mary Farrar to speak to council with respect to Clause 2 from Port Number 77, the Employment Lands Area Review. Ms. Farrar.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Appreciate it. I'll try and be fast here. As many of you know, I'm president of the Community Association, the Friends of Kingston Inner Harbor, and I have approximately 1,000 people on my mailing list. And I'm speaking today with concerns that have been emailed to me by 25 to 30 members of my mailing list who are all over the city of Kingston and the world, in fact. So my concern is about the lack of inclusion of Collins Bay as part of the land employment possibility. And, you know, this is a large portion of land pretty central in Kingston that has facilities, and we don't see any reason why this hasn't been included. We don't know why the federal government, when it recently gave away 56 federal properties to various municipalities for housing, why the Collins Bay area wasn't included. And I'm sure staff, we really do appreciate the work that staff has done, and the reports that have gone into this have all been, you know, required a huge amount of work. But this seems like a gaping hole. And in the interests of openness and transparency, I have one ask for council tonight when this project comes before you, to please inquire of staff what the status is in their negotiations with the federal government about Collins Bay and the potential future inclusion of Collins Bay for housing, for affordable housing, for land employment, for offices, for all of the things that are mentioned in the land report. Why aren't we hearing about this? Why is this shut off? I mean, I used to work in the prisons. I understand corrections concerns. It seems to me that they're doing pretty well with their downing of drones. And if the municipality had all of that land, you wouldn't necessarily have to build right beside the wall where somebody could send a drone from their house over the fence or something like that. I mean, you could just use a third of the land far away. It could be a mix of mid-rises and single-family homes and offices and employment opportunities. So again, my ask is that I would really like council to ask staff, what is the status of this, and can future locations be added to the land employment locations that are currently there? So I leave that with you. Thank you. How long was I?
You were like 3 minutes, so
3
you're
minutes.
good.
Oh, I didn't make
no
it.
problem.
I was good, hoping I could be one. So.
No problem. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Steve.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson, through you. Thank you for coming. One question I have is, have you and your team spoken to our MP's office, since we know this is federal land?
I haven't got I lost a hearing aid, my cat took it away, and I don't have, I don't have hearing aids right now. Perhaps you could tell me.
Sure, so the question was, have you or your group spoken to the MP since it's federal land and it doesn't, it's not given by the city? So have you spoken to MP Garrettson about this?
I have spoken to Mark Garrettson, but I don't know if staff has. I'm assuming staff has. I don't know.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. And I would just like to say, if you would like to ask him again, please do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so no other questions. Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank you.
so I will now go home and watch on TV. It's wonderful that this video happens. Thank you.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so we'll now move to our final delegation this evening. We'll invite Martha Vosper to speak to council with respect to new motion number 1 regarding the cricket field.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson and councillors and city staff. And I'm here to talk as the past chair of the Sydenham District Association for the last 2.5 years. I commend you for what you've done for sports in Kingston. I think it's amazing. And I think it's very good that all of this goes forward and the kids are healthy and strong. I think that's an amazing part. I spent over 40 years with my Frontenac Club daycare, and raising strong, healthy kids is a passion of mine. But I am disappointed and disheartened, very dismayed at the possibility of breaking the agreement that the city made with Sydenham District Association. The reason I'm upset with it is because this is a heritage property, and it is a public property that is used by a lot of people. The SDA was formed in 1960s. We are a community of neighbors who aim to maintain and improve the quality of life, build heritage, and the environment in the Sydenham District. We have much to contend with in the Sydenham District. It's now up to 30-some thousand university students. Property standards have decreased. Our lives are affected hugely by what happens in our district. This park is a huge piece of our heritage. It is a huge piece of what we are in Sydenham District. Now, I'm not arguing that there should be a really good field. I'm not arguing about that. But the city told us, and I met in those meetings in 2022, that this fence would be temporary. If it's only $10,000 to build a temporary one, then I am sure we can find a way to make that happen. In his recent book, Possible, William Ury speaks to 3 points of conflict resolution. Firstly, you need to go to the balcony. You need to look at the big picture. Who is this affecting and what is it doing? It's definitely affecting to heritage. You did not build your field out in the outer parts of Kingston for a very good reason. It's an incredibly beautiful city. In fact, I'm sure we have to thank the city for fixing that fountain because of your tournament. But You came into the downtown core because of the value, because of the beauty, and because it's a beautiful neighborhood. This neighborhood matters. The people in the neighborhood matter. My father was one of the founding members of the SDA in 1960s. He was a councillor for 12 years. He was actually one of the men who helped rebuild City Hall, put the portico back on, and get the money to renovate. He used to be down in the corner, the council chambers. I understand that hundreds and hundreds of hours go into sports, but I have to tell you, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours go into caring for this city and for fighting for things. It breaks my heart to walk down the street now and not be able to see the dome of the city up against the sky. Breaks my heart to see that fence because it's exclusionary. The second point, after going to the balcony to see the big picture, what is the I'll go back. I don't know if some of the councillors got to read this letter, but what is the intention of your vote? Who will gain, and what gain will there be for the city? Who and what are we going to serve with the decision to increase the accessibility or to deny the use of this space to only one group? Secondly, we have to build a bridge. We have to work together. Isn't a temporary fence an option? I mean, it's like, yeah, it looks really good now, and it's great, and we brought in millions of dollars, and this is wonderful. And now it's, as Professor Gordon said, there's this visible, you don't belong here, you can't use this space. And I don't think that's acceptable. How do we serve both groups? I think a temporary fence is possible. Cordoning off this space for years until such time that that age group can return to the city, although I was happy to hear that you've got things happening in 2025.
30 seconds.
Okay. And the third side is from exclusion to inclusion. There is always a large horizon. There is much to be done. It is up to you to contribute some small part to the program of human betterment for all time. We need to work together. This is our neighborhood. I spent decades playing in that park and in the cricket field. And I'm just a very passionate person about my downtown part of this city.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Glenn.
Thank you, through you. Thank you so much, Martha, for explaining your passion for it. Can you speak to your experience of the park, what you do there, and others?
Well, we had a wonderful, huge musical event before COVID. I've seen all kinds of games happen. I'm not a sports person. I envy the sports people in this room because I'm not one, but I'm always walking in that park, and I see lots and lots of people, little parks, a little picnic set up, things happening. It's just a multi-use park for a lot of people in the area, and we don't have a lot of parks in Sydenham District.
Thank you. And you mentioned the fountain. Can you speak to what that fence does to the renovation of the courthouse and how that's experienced by others?
I think it's the exclusionary part of it. You know, I played in that fountain a lot as a kid. I ran all around the cricket field. We did all kinds of stuff. But if there's a lock on something and we don't use this, then it's an unfortunate way of being in the world. I think we need to be more inclusive. And we've also got to consider the fact that we have the Indigenous group across the street, the Four Directions, and we have TP Moza on the other side. And I see a lot of different groups using that as a place to meet and create circles. And I'm not saying they're going to be sitting in the middle of the ball diamond, but it's just the visual of this is ours and you can't come here. And that feels unfortunate to me.
Okay, are there any other questions from council? Wait, seeing none, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, so we have no further delegations this evening. We haven't done this for a while, but one thing that I could propose to council, because I know that most people in the audience and most of the delegations have been focused on new motion number 1. With the consent of council, we could deal with new motion number 1 before the other reports. Is that acceptable? All right. So what we'll do is we'll just, instead of, before we get to report number 76, that we'll deal with new motion number 1. Okay, so with consent, we have no briefings this evening. Are there any petitions to present? Okay, seeing none, we do have one motion of recognition, moved by Councillor Stevens, seconded by Councillor Ridge, that Kingston City Council recognize the third week of September as Consent Week. Recognized by many post-secondary institutions and municipalities across Ontario, the timing of Consent Week has been chosen to highlight that during the first weeks of school, there is a significant increase in sexual violence. Consent is giving permission for something to happen or agreement to do something without threat or coercion. Consent is also about setting boundaries, having the freedom to express those boundaries, respecting the boundaries set by others, and being able to accept rejection and move on. The City of Kingston recognizes the efforts of Queen's University to encourage and foster consent culture and encourages all Kingston residents to do the same. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Okay, so we have no deferred motions. So at this point, we will now move to new motion number 1. Just a reminder, which we had discussed earlier, is that we will now use the voting system that is on eScribe for recorded votes. So moving ahead to new motion number 1, moved by Councillor Amos, seconded by Councillor Shapes. Whereas the cricket field located at 32 Bagot Street has been utilized by the community for many years and is part of a municipally designated property under an Ontario Heritage Act. And whereas in 2022, following engagement with the Sydenham District Association and Heritage Kingston, City Council approved improvements to the cricket field, including a temporary fence and gates around the outfield to support a national championship tournament in Kingston. Whereas the temporary fence around the outfield was intended to be removed post-tournament based on direction from City Council. And whereas some members of the community have shared concerns about the removal of the temporary fence as they see value in its retention for future uses, including potential future events, and whereas City Council wants to ensure that it maximizes the taxpayers' investments in community infrastructure. Therefore, be resolved that City Council directs staff to consult with the Sydenham District Association and the Kingston Heritage Properties Committee to identify options that could possibly result in an event-based or permanent outfield fence at Cricket Field, either through use of the existing temporary fence or a new fence, and that Council directs staff to consider options for reuse or relocation of the temporary outfield fence should it not remain at Cricket Field to maximize taxpayers' investment, and the Council directs staff to leave the temporary outfield fence at Cricket Field until staff report back with options in early 2025. Councillor Amos, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. Through you, I'd ask staff if they could put up the first slide for me. I'd appreciate it. Thank you. So in order for, one, I want to say thank you to all the groups that have presented today or tonight. Clearly passion is coming to the forefront through all of this. One of my biggest concerns when a facility like this is made or brought together, obviously some of it is the dollar figure. And when you have a facility that's over $1 million to construct, 1,100 staff hours from multiple departments, we now have a state-of-the-art facility for our youth to enjoy. It created the opportunity for us to host the Canadian Little League Championships. Without this fence, it would not be a proper ball field. It would be the same as a hockey rink with no boards, or a soccer field with no goalposts. It's just part of a proper field, and in this case, it's baseball. Slide 2, please. Now, Ms. Lambert from Kingston Tourism gave a very thorough presentation on what this ball diamond did do for us, how much it generated for us, and the potential for what it can do moving forward. And you can see from, well, the list of tournaments that she brought forward, but the one I want to highlight the most is the Little League Ontario is interested in hosting the first girls Little League provincial tournament in the region. It can't be done anywhere else, and it's because of this field. We can grow to be multiple events annually in the cricket field it can begin to bridge the gender gap in Little League youth baseball, and that's huge. Traditionally, when you think of baseball, you think of boys. And when you start to think hardball and you think women, female youth moving forward, that's an awesome prospect for us as a city. And that's where we need to move forward. For us to be able to host another national championship, the reason we're even being considered for this national championship and to be shortlisted is because of this field. U13, and I'm assuming it's seven more teams with our host team hosting the tournament itself. The economic engine is huge for us. Sport tourism is huge for our region. We have the ball field. It can open the gateway to so many benefits to our youth and our community. Leisure tourism is down this past year for our city. Sport tourism, especially this tournament, filled our hotels. And when I say filled, it wasn't 90%, 80%. It filled. For 10 days, it filled our hotels. It filled our restaurants. Added to our tour trolley, as you can see the pictures that were up. Toured all of our museums. As a city, we had an opportunity. We moved forward with it, and it proved to be a success. I'm going to keep this short. There's a number of presentations have already been done on this. So I ask for your support for this review, to have all groups come together to hopefully find a solution for this ball field. I think it's a reasonable request. I was not there 5 years ago when this was decided, but here we are. We've got a great ball field that is nationally recognized and is creating opportunities for us as a city. I ask for your support on this motion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chinani.
Hi, my question would be to staff about this. So if this motion were to go through, could the locks be unlocked or the gates removed as a possibility while the discussions and go through?
Oh, Mr. Falwell, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, staff and engineering will work with Public Works tomorrow and talk about the removal of locks so it could be opened up for general use.
Thank you. So then technically, like, this community and the school could use the space while we're continuing to discuss. So realize this motion is just to discuss the fate of the fence, and it could end up being where it's a permanent fence or a temporary fence or no fence at all in the end. I mean, but I think it's worth exploring to see what the community needs are, especially with the impact with tourism and sport and the need for all the growth that's happening there. So I think we just need to reevaluate what the impact's going to be and what the need is. So I think I'll be supporting this motion because this is things we need to know and we really need to discuss this. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody else on new motion number 1? Councillor Glenn.
Thank you, and through you. As you can well imagine, I'm not supportive of this motion from the perspective that we're going back on what was agreed upon. There was a lengthy consultation process here with the SDA, and the fences were supposed to come down. As has been pointed out multiple times, it's only the outfield fence that's coming down. I requested a copy of the original report, and it was clearly outlined in that heritage report that went to council. So the heritage report was September 21st of 2022, and it went to the October 4th, 2022 meeting of council. And in there, that was the agreement, that and the outside track. This was done because this is an inclusive park. We've already heard at previous meetings that our parks aren't very inclusive. And now we're going to put up a fence and make them less inclusive. And, you know, people keep going back and forth about, well, what's actually happening out there? And I think we've heard from the neighborhood what happens there. They're the people who live there. They're the people who use it regularly. And I see these fences as very much like the barriers we put up when we do a parade or when we hold another event in a park, even Canada Day. We put up barriers, we put up tents, we put up things, and then we take them down because the event's over, because we go back to the other things we do. And what we were told was that this was going to be for a tournament. Now, I was always happy to have discussions, but not when we're going back on something like this, not when it's been negotiated. Come and have a discussion in good faith. This is not good faith. To have a neighborhood association work with you for months and then to turn around and say, hey, thanks, but no thanks. We're going to go back on what we decided we'd do. As to the part about tournaments, we want a tournament with nothing in place, and we've heard that the kids can continue to play. They can play effectively. Kids have played on these fields for years, so they'll still be able to come out and play. And we're still going to be in a position where tournaments are possible. We don't see tournaments every day or even every year most of the time. If you ask most cities, you'll find that they look to get mid-sized or smaller tournaments every second year, large tournaments potentially every 5, because they rotate around municipalities. That's part of the economic development piece, and it's part of ensuring inclusivity of the entire province or country for the sport. Everybody who came today knew what had been talked about. So I'm hoping that you will give consideration for respect to the community. Because what we're talking about isn't simply a fence, it's about the things that we actually value in this community. So what is it that we value? Do we value our constituents and their everyday lived experience? I hope we do, because that's what they're talking about. Or do we simply value one particular sport above all others in a particular place? There were opportunities to have put this in another location, but as has been mentioned, it was put in City Park because City Park is a beautiful park. And it's beautiful because of all the work that's been done generation after generation to care for the space, to ensure that nothing else got built there. So with respect to that, I think we need to honor the agreement we had. It doesn't mean a discussion still can't be had, but other options have been made available. Other options were discussed. It's very likely we'll be able to pull a lot of the plans, and I'm going to ask that question of staff. Do we still have all the potential plans available?
Mr. Falwell.
Thank you, through, and sorry, Councillor, but plans available related to the conversations that took place in regards to this field?
Yes.
Certainly, we have the public engagement and the process that took place. I'm not sure we have every single draft and version, but we can pull up the concept development and the conversations for sure, and the concessions and how we got to this point, as indicated by Professor Gordon. You know, things got moved around and space got created to create as open of a space as possible. So we would certainly bring those back to the table if this motion's approved as part of those conversations with the associations.
Okay, but suffice to say, there were multiple plans developed and lots of conversation about what this could be and what it could look like. That's already occurred?
Yeah, that's correct, and that's our approach with our public engagement through our park development process at this location or other locations, whether it's a revitalization project or a new park. So they start in the concept stage and conversations happen until the shovel's in the ground and the facility is open and enjoyed.
Okay, thank you. And so I think the last point that I'm going to make here is that I asked about how long baseball is played, what their season is, and it's roughly 4.5 months. There's 12 months in a year, and so we're sectioning off a large portion with this fence for that play, and for play for Little League, not for any other level of sport. So I hope you'll give consideration to a bit of respect for the community that lives here, and the values that we all purport to believe in, which is inclusivity, multi-use, and also that we do have some respect for the heritage considerations that this district so values. Thank you.
Okay, next on my list is Councillor Oosterhoff.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. I would just correct my colleague here. The baseball is used for about 6 or even closer to 7 months, I believe. So I think it's important to be clear. Though I do hear my colleague, and I respect that the difficulty that kind of arises here. I really, I'm a baseball guy. I love baseball, and it's in my heart. And so right from the beginning, I was hoping, having had the privilege, Mayor Patterson, of giving the greetings on your behalf, it was really, really an honor to be there and to experience what I did there and get that feel of that excitement that you get from baseball. So, and it is fantastic. Yeah, I'm a bit torn on this one because I was there in November 22 too. I didn't realize for myself the depth of the passion on both sides, and I think there is some respect required here from both sides because it kind of does remind me a bit of the Field of Dreams. Okay, I think we all know that movie, and I could have seen that movie many times over. It was a good one because it does something to you. It changes you. And so that's kind of what we're seeing here, I think. In my heart, I see that. And everyone who spoke so well. And all along, I want to support the baseball dream here. Because Kingston's a special town and it has so many great sports. And I will say that Ms. Vosper really did touch my heart as well because she grew up there as well. But I didn't know that the field was locked. Okay, that bothers me a lot. And I also know from engineering, they're going, we don't want to unlock it because we want to preserve it in that sense. So we understand the rationale, right? Why we're locking it because we want to protect it, kind of, and I get that, but I probably don't like it. I wanted to ask staff, Mayor Patterson, a quick question about, was there another, because my kids played ball, I know how rare it is to find a good ball field, and that's no criticism on sports and rec, but ball fields need to be in a particular shape to prevent injury. Was there another field, Mayor Patterson, that was close that if I think about it, could it be somewhere else? I want to ask that. Where could it be?
Mr. Follow.
Thank you, and through you. I guess we'd have to consider that through the application process, Councillor. Certainly, we have similar sized ball diamonds. My colleague Neil Unsworth provided some information that included Veterans, Ron Lavallee, as other locations where the field size could exist. There would be other improvements that would be required in order to accommodate the needs of an event like this, improved dugouts, seating, that type of amenity. And we have other softball diamonds as well that are similar size, but not for the same type of event that just happened this past summer. So we do have a number of amenities that are similar, certainly not in the same location and to the standard that this field currently is at.
Yes, okay, that helps me. It's not clear, but I do think having been there and what everyone sees here tonight was something special was done there. So my hat's off and all our hats off to staff and building something pretty special there. I wanted to, I didn't know either, Mayor Patterson, that it is possible. I think it is possible to take the fence down and do temporary. We heard someone offering $1,000. I think we could community raise $10,000 quicker than a cat can wink its eye. Really, we could do that really quick. Raise $10,000. So, and if you ever seen a cat wink its eye, it's very quick. So we could do that and solve a lot of problems. So that's kind of what I wanted to bring to the table. The reason I want to bring up an amendment is so that we do the hard work tonight and think about the possibility of just changing the rec staff to leave the to remove the temporary fence at Cricket Field until staff at the end of the season. At the end of this season, so we have it for the whole season, and because I think the part I hear. It is about respect, and I think the baseball community should recognize that. Let's respect the deep history, the deep connection of, give my rationale later. So I'd like to have an amendment, Mayor Patterson, that the outfield fence that's there be removed at the end of the year, and that the dialogue happens. Ms. Vosberg did an excellent job talking about restorative conversations and how you do that. That is how you do it, is you show that you will engage. And so I'm talking too much, but go ahead. That's what I'd like to see.
Okay.
Amendment to remove.
Madam Clerk, can I see it from him? Okay, so my proposal, Councilor Ostrov, we don't have an amendment in writing, so here's what I'm going to suggest, that when we do the vote on new motion 1, that we can do one vote on every paragraph except for the last one, and then we can do a separate paragraph, or so we can do a separate vote on the last paragraph.
Okay, sorry, yeah.
Okay, so we'll just do a separation, okay.
I think that's fair, so we can.
I'm sorry? Yeah, effectively the amendment is just dealing with the last clause. So effectively the cleanest way to do this is just to have 2 separate votes. So we'll just do a separate vote on that last clause and then we'll go from there.
Sorry, I guess this is a point of order. For those new in the room, I do that a lot. You'll get used to that. I do points of order. So for clarification, the last clause, are we amending it or are we voting it up and down? Because if it's an amendment, it needs to be seconded and we need to separately.
So that's a good point. Madam Clerk, can I see it one more time?
Well, thanks. Okay.
I want to get it right. Yeah.
For those visiting, procedural questions are very common in City Hall because we have to do things right because these are sort of legally binding directives that we're giving to staff. We appreciate your patience. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Tozo, you do raise a good point that I believe what Councillor Osterhoff had suggested is an amendment that would remove the fence at the end of the season. So voting against that clause would be different. Presumably, if that last paragraph was to fail, then the directive to staff would be to remove the fence immediately. So given that, it's fair, Councillor Osterhoff, that if that is your intention, it does need to be an amendment.
Okay.
So what I would propose, it's 8:14, we'll take a 10-minute break, give you a chance to craft the wording for that amendment, and then we will discuss.
Thank you.
We'll reconvene at 8:24. Okay, folks, it is now 8:25, so I'll ask if councillors can grab their seats, please. Okay, so my understanding is that we do now have an amendment. It was moved by Councillor Ostroff, seconded by Councillor Osanek, that new motion number 1 be amended to delete and replace the third recommend clause with the following, that council directs staff to remove the temporary outfield fence at the cricket field at the end of the 2024 baseball season, and that staff report back with options in early 2025. Councillor Osterhoff, this is your amendment. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Patterson. So thanks to my seconder for this, and I think we all probably know where I'm suggesting we go. And again, I'll give Ms. Vosper the credit, though I've been involved in restorative conversations in the past, even in my work. As a councillor at different times, and this is an opportunity for us to council just to take a moment to think about it. I know you might want to say, no, let's go with it. I don't think it disrespects my colleague, who I have given commendations of the motion from the beginning, because I was drawn to it because of my passion for the game. But Ms. Vosper spoke about building a bridge. This is an opportunity for us to build a bridge and have that discussion, so we can serve both groups. In my mind, a temporary fence is a good option, and she mentioned about working together. This is how we demonstrate that we can do that. And so it does change my position a little bit, but a locked field doesn't do it for me. That's exclusionary. We just came up last council with an amazing, inclusive parks, and we celebrate that, and I do today. But this seems to go against that mentality, really, of inclusiveness. So, and I think it's really important to hear each other. And the one I really hear as well, Mayor Patterson, is about the history of that amazing area, the years that have gone by, how it was used by generation of children and adults. And so I think it's in a sense of respecting the past and past decisions, and how we can, I think staff can get this. We can do this well and right, because we see the image of it in the field that we have, and I believe that we can now complete the picture where we can have our cake and eat it too. That we're let's accomplish that together. And I'm asking for your support. Thank you.
Okay, so we are only speaking right now to the amendment. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak to the amendment? Councillor Shapes.
Thank you. Well, first I'm going to touch on the money problem. This overall motion is going to public engagement, and we're going to see what happens. So if it continues, if we take the fence down now, and then the engagement goes to put it back up, then we're spending money to put the fence back that was already there. And I sort of have an issue at that aspect. The other concern we've brought up through here, and it's been noted, is the gates are locked, which I think most of us were somewhat unaware of that. So I know staff was commented about it. Do we have any further direction on that in regards to if the lock's coming off so it's more accessible? Because that seems to be a main touching point.
Okay, so I do believe that staff actually answered that question, but just because some people obviously didn't catch it, can I just ask staff to weigh in on that one more time? Mr. Folwell?
Yeah, that's correct. And through you, Your Honors, staff will be working with Public Works to have the locks removed tomorrow. I'm not aware of any major events that are coming up on the fields. We want to make sure that there's time for them to prep if there are, but the full intention is to unlock the gates and let people use it when it's not booked.
Okay, so the locks will not be an issue as of tomorrow. The other thing I'm going to note, I was going to say it on the other motion, the original motion, we've had historical issues with certain parks with vehicles being driven through it, especially on the East End, soccer fields, and a few others, causing thousands of dollars of damage. We just built this park, this ball field, and that outside fence will help prevent that. So gates can be opened so people have access to, but vehicles won't be able to access it and drive through it and tear it all up and spending even more money trying to fix it up. So unfortunately, at this point in time, I can't support the amendment.
Councillor Toso.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. Through you, a question for staff is the end of the 2024 baseball season. What do you interpret that date as being?
Ms. Santucci.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I believe that it is the end of September. Or it could, we've just made the change to that. I apologize. It could be the mid of October. Sorry about that.
October 15th.
Okay. So I'm comfortable leaving up the fencing, and I'll have more to say when we get back to the original motion. I'm going to vote against this right now because I think that there's additional utility we could use for the park. And just speaking to the amendment, I think that's too soon because the original amendment, the original motion is about going back and having further discussion. So I'm going to vote against this right now, and then we can go back to the main motion. I'll have more to say that. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else on the amendment? Councillor Glenn?
Thank you, and through you. So first, thank you very much to my colleague for bringing this amendment and for understanding the issue that I raised about respect, because I think it's a really critical one. We can have a lot of discussions about things, but if you want to have a good discussion, it has to start with that foundation. And right now, by leaving this fence up when the intent was to take it down, is showing a measure of disrespect for the community that fully engaged on this topic. So I understand that people are concerned about the cost, but when we weigh the cost of taking this fence down and potentially putting it back up, we're weighing it against the good faith and the trust that our constituents put in us to honor the things that we do and to work with them with that open transparency. So I think, it calls into question our integrity to some degree to go back on things like this. Yes, it was a great tournament, and I think everybody agreed on that. So I appreciate Councillor Oosterhoff bringing this forward. I will vote for this amendment because I think it honors the original intent, and I fully intend to continue to do that on behalf of my constituents.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Hassan, will you take the chair?
I do and recognize you.
Thank you. So I strongly disagree with the assertion that leaving the fence is an act of disrespect. We are a council that has to consider the needs of the community as a whole. We've talked about being inclusive. Inclusive means that everyone matters, regardless of where you live in this community. We are trying to do the hard work of balancing different interests. And frankly, when we get back to the main motion, that's basically going to be my argument, is kind of remind everyone what's in front of us, is really just to see if we can work out something that balances the interests in front of us. But right now, I'm just speaking to the amendment. Given the fact that by the end of the baseball season, we're basically heading into winter, and a lot of any other sports or what could be used in that field is basically unusable anyways until the spring, it seems to me it makes sense. Just leave the field up, and then we will have those consultations, and then we can decide what to do in 2025. Everyone matters. We want to hear from everyone. Yes, there are residents in the neighborhood that have been affected, but you cannot discount the fact that this field has captured the imagination of our community. I have heard from countless people, baseball lovers and non-baseball lovers, about how amazing this field is, and we also need to respect them. We want to respect the neighborhood, but we need to respect everybody. And because of my concern that now this amendment has been characterized as somehow an act of disrespect, for that reason, I'm asking council to vote against the amendment so that we can have a truly level playing field. We can have everybody involved in these discussions. You liked that, didn't you? Thank you very much. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Can I have the chair back?
Yes, return to you.
And you want to speak as well? Okay, I'll put you on the speaker list. Next on my list is Councillor Amos.
Thank you, Patterson, and through you. I appreciate everyone's comments on this, and Councillor Oosterhoff, I appreciate you bringing this motion forward. I will not be voting for this, and some of the main reasons, obviously a lot of people talked about. My biggest concern is that staff put a lot of time Our contractor put a lot of time in bringing this field up to a state-of-the-art facility ready for national championships. We take that fence down over the wintertime. Councillor Shave has already mentioned possibility of vehicles coming on there and wrecking the turf. Anything can happen over the wintertime. There's no harm in leaving that fence up to keep that field in the state it's in. Staff has already agreed the locks are coming off, and I believe, Councillor Oosterhoff, that was one of your biggest concerns. I get that. My concern as well. Fully recognize that. Glad the locks are coming off. That being said, the field needs to stay in its current state. I want to remind staff and council, we are bidding on another multi-million-dollar tournament coming to this city. That field has to stay in its current state. I can't support this motion. Thanks.
Okay, next is Councillor Hassan.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Listening to both parties, my colleagues, very patiently, and I was not thinking to say anything, but with your comments, Your Worship, is encouraging me to say a few words. I understand from the both parties, the negotiation about this temporary fence at the first place was poor negotiation. Planning to build the baseball field is maybe was poor decision, poor planning. But regardless of those poor planning and poor negotiation as the first place, we're talking about the community. We are talking about the togetherness. I respect the Suriname community, the district association, and the people who speak. There is a heart-touching story and how they use that field. But we keep forgetting from the both side that the both groups are our community. They're both group are Kingstonian. We just keep saying the league people, the baseball people, and the neighborhood living in the district, we shouldn't talk sitting on this seat around the house shoot like dividing the community. We should talk together. It was poor negotiation. It was poor designing. It was a poor decision in the beginning. I accept that. I recognize that. But when we talk about the Suriname district neighborhood who use that park, claim that is their heritage, that's their part of their life. But these young people sitting here and the community members sitting here, they're also part of your city. They're part of our community. So who should I include? I am in the position, and thank you for both groups to put me in this position to think who is right and who is wrong. Both of you are my people, are my Kingstonians. It's my community. So I am very sad to hear that from both sides to put us all in this position where we have to decide, okay, you are right and you are wrong. You deserve more and they deserve less. But despite of that, we shouldn't have such situation. And I apologize anyone who feel that decision or negotiation in the first place was poorly made. You know, we shouldn't have that kind of decision. We shouldn't say it's temporary, and we shouldn't say that, okay, well, you know, we're gonna let you play this year, but not next year, and then put $1 million up there and build the state-of-the-art facility and promising the one group, okay, we're gonna tear it down after the tournament. That was not the right thing, and I recognize that. But having said that, I think we are at the point right now we are opening up the door for more engagement, more discussion. And I'm in favor of to leave the fence up there and let's discuss up to the next year so they have tournament. If community decide, the Kingstonian decide that they do not need the fence, I will respect and I will vote for it. And if they say no, that's okay to have it. The both community can, you know, work together and use field inclusively. You know, I will vote for that. But at this point, I think the keeping the fence up there is more important than tearing it down to temporarily again and go back and put it. So I can't support this motion.
Okay, next on my list is Councillor Stephen.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson, through you. So I can understand the feeling of disappointment for some community members in Sydenham District because these expectations were set back in 2022 and these expectations are not being met. So those were those conversations that were had back then. But I think it's really important as well to recognize that it's 2024 and the context has actually changed. So back when those conversations were happening, we didn't know what we know now. And we didn't even have the field when those conversations were happening. It was all theoretical at that time. So I think that given we're in a new place right now, I think it's entirely reasonable that we're going to hopefully direct staff to go away and have these conversations. But in the meantime, to this amendment, leaving it in place is the only thing that makes sense to me. Taking it down, letting the field get wrecked over the winter, and anyone who's had anyone walk on any kind of yard through the winter time, I've seen schoolyards, you should see them in the spring, they are an absolute disaster. So we need to protect it, to Councillor Amos's point, and also it seems completely absurd to spend the money to take the fence down to then maybe put, it's an absolute waste of money to do that. Leave it where it is, so I'm opposed to this amendment. Thanks.
Okay, Councillor McLaren.
Thank you. I was going to ask these questions during the main motion, but it seems appropriate now. Can we get some fact checks? One of the delegations pointed to a map of the field with a red rectangle showing where a possible soccer field that was played before COVID was. Is that an accurate thing? Because it looked like the fence was going through about a third of that that soccer field. Is it true that there was soccer being played prior to this fence being put up? And is that picture accurate that shows that the fence would actually be in where the soccer field would have been, or where people would play soccer?
Mr. Follow.
Thank you, through you. I don't know the dimensions, Councillor, of the field that was shown there. Certainly, we have a mini soccer field in the southwest corner of the existing city park. The open space would permit open soccer from just pylons on the field as they were described. We have shown some information that it's not large enough to accommodate, say, a full-size cricket field, as the name suggests. So, it wouldn't accommodate a full-size soccer pitch. But,
sorry, did you say would or wouldn't? I'm sorry, did you say it would?
Sorry, it would not accommodate it, a full-size soccer pitch in that space.
Sorry, that's with the fence or without the fence?
With the fence.
Could it happen without the fence?
Certainly it could have. We could fit a full-size soccer field in that space, utilizing the ball diamond in the northeast corner and the existing new ball diamond that was constructed. If there were no fences, yes, a full-size soccer field would fit in this space.
Okay. What about a football field?
So, Councillor McLaren, I just want to pause for a moment. So the amendment is talking about what to do between the end of the baseball season and early 2025.
Yes,
so I just want
soccer and football are played by the school right in that area, and they may need that space, which is where that is leading.
Between November and March.
Soccer starts, I believe, in November.
Okay.
Football starts in September.
I'm just trying to bring you back to the amendment, just to clarify. That's fine. Mr. Follow.
Yeah, so this space was never a bookable rectangular field for soccer or football. There's informal uses that take place. And, it's certainly the recommendation to ensure that you have access to that space from a user group is that you book a city field, either rectangular or a ball diamond, even as a school user group. And certainly, I know our public works team's on the call or on the meeting tonight that want to ensure that our rectangular spaces and our bookable fields are not utilized by other groups so that they can be then used for those bookable spaces. Memorial Center, I think, is another good example of that in the downtown area where a number of spaces coexist and they're bookable spaces. But there is a small soccer field in City Park to the south, but it's not a full-size field.
In the past, it was claimed that Sydenham School used that area. Was that true in the past? And have they indicated any indication that they may want to use that space without the fence?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not aware of that. I would need some support from Director Elgersma in terms of the bookings within our existing facilities, whether sports fields or otherwise, or Director Santucci to comment on the Sydenham Public Schools' current bookings with the City of Kingston.
Not only current, past, as in, were they doing it? Were they excluded as a result of this fence?
If they were doing it, it wasn't a bookable space, and certainly they likely go down at recess and utilize that space, like a number of our schools, I think, do.
Commissioner Campbell.
Thank you, and through you, happy to address that question. It's our understanding that the school may be using it informally, as Director Falwell just indicated, but we don't have a current agreement with the school to allow them, unfettered use of that field for the reason for school recreational.
Thank you. And we also heard through an email that it was $20,000 for temporary fencing. We heard from one of the delegations that they priced it at $10,000. Is the difference the labor?
Mr. Unsworth.
Through you, without seeing the quotes, I can't comment on that, but sorry, I see Mr. Unsworth also has his hand up there.
Mr. Unsworth, go ahead.
Thanks, Luke. Through you, Mr. Chair. The temporary fencing that's installed in the current facility to the untrained eye looks like regular chain link fence with the posts go into the ground, so forth and so on, required archaeological approval and all the like. Alternate temporary fences that Professor Gordon referred to, costing less than that, would be made of different materials. And that's the fundamental difference between what's on the field now, that's essentially a traditional construction material just installed in a temporary way, versus event fencing, which is what I believe Professor Gordon was more referring to.
Could a tournament be used or be done with event fencing rather than the current temporary fencing?
So, Councillor McLaren, this relates to the amendment?
Yes, because I can't ask later if the amendment passes. This is the crux of the motion. It's in this particular motion that is this particular line in the...
So I agree. I agree that it's a valid line of questioning on the main motion, regardless of whether the amendment passes or not. But talking about the details of the fencing, in my view, I don't understand how that applies to the amendment that's on the floor. So you're welcome. I'll certainly entertain more of these questions once we get back to the main motion, either way.
Sorry, say that again?
So the line of questioning about understanding the different options with the fence is absolutely valid for the main motion, but I don't believe that this is relevant to the amendment itself, which is on the floor. I'm simply trying to keep everybody around the table just steered to the amendment first, and then we'll be back to the main motion where you'll have another chance to speak and ask those questions.
Okay. Okay, I'll wait for the rest then.
Okay, next on my list for the amendment, Councillor Bohm, I saw your hand up. Did you want to speak to the amendment? No? Okay. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak to the amendment? If not, Councillor Osterhoff, you have the last word.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Patterson, and thanks for the good discussion, everyone. And I just want to ask one question, if I could. Was there not an inclusion in the budget to have the fence removed if it was included in the original understanding?
Mr. Falwell.
Yes, thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, the current capital budget includes the cost to remove the fence.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that I think we need to know what's important here, and I believe it's important because of what we heard from those who were there in the discussion. and early on, the understanding, the agreement. And I think that that is more important, and the most important thing that we recognize, that there was a trust there. There was an understanding. And for those that weren't there, and even those who, as a voting person in 2022, I did not realize the depth of the discussion. I don't recall that. So I'm asking for us to show that kind of goodwill. And I believe the baseball community can understand that. This is not pitting the one side of Kingston to the other side, but this is one side coming in to a deep tradition. And you know what? I've done enough in the heritage of pushing back at different times. I think this is a time to embrace that and to engage in discussion, to complete what was planned, and then have a good discussion over the winter. So I'm asking for your support, because good discussions start with trust. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to call the vote on the amendment. So just so everyone's following, this is a vote whether or not to replace the last clause of the motion, and then we will continue debate on the motion as is. If everyone is their e-scribe open, the vote is now open for the amendment.
Okay, Mayor Patterson, I'm going to just cancel and reopen the vote, and we'll ask people to please try again.
Okay, we tried. So we'll do a hand vote. So on the motion to amend, all those in favor? Opposed? And that loses by a vote of 4-9. Councillor Osanek, Osterhoff, McLaren, and Glenn in the minority. Okay, so we are back to the main motion as not amended. And next on my list is Councillor Tozo.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. Through you, it looks like I'm next up at bat. There's going to be a lot of these puns, so I'd ask you to just maintain. First of all, the legal agreement, the agreement with the Sydenham Association, is this legally binding for the city? Hello?
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Morley, go ahead.
That's a question.
Thank you. Through your worship, there is no formal legal agreement between the city and the Sydenham District Association. The city is the owner of the property. I understand that it was a condition of the heritage approval that the fence be removed.
Okay, thank you. Let's sort of clarify what this motion is about. It's about fencing, and it's about to go back, talk to the Sydenham Association, talk to Heritage, leave the fence up until we all come to some sort of major agreement, and then maybe we'll decide on what we're going to do going forward. We are here to talk, and we want to make sure everybody can live with something. That's one thing I've learned about being a counselor is we often don't make everybody happy, but we try to make it so that people can live with it, right? Everybody walks away a little happy, a little unhappy. We found a good public policy, and that's, I think, what we're looking for. Another thing I want to address is that about heritage, and I've seen that term thrown around since I've been elected a counselor. Heritage isn't shackles. It doesn't bind the present. We acknowledge heritage, we honor it, and we work with it as part of what an amazing city that we are part of. Kingston is where heritage and innovation meet. It's a great slogan. You guys can use it if you want, and staff. I see it when we walk into our town or driving into town. It's a great slogan. I've heard from constituents in Kings Court and Rideau Heights whose kids use the field, and as it was written by Warren Kinsella, from Field of Dreams. If you build it, it's actually called Shula's Show. It's a good book. Recommend you read it. If you build it, they will come. We built it, and they came. Second baseball reference. The Little League Diamonds came. The Little Leagues came, and that's amazing. I don't think this motion is out of left field. I've seen motions strike out. I've seen motions bunted down with deferrals. Councillor Amos.
So, point of order, that's too many baseball puns in one sentence.
I understand that. I will say I think that what we are asking staff to do is go back, talk to everybody, report back, leave it up until we come to a decision. That cost is absolutely outrageous to take it down and put it back up. I'm fine with the motion that we have supported here. I think this motion is a home run. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Toza. Next is Councillor Bohm.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you. Just listening to everything, I sometimes wonder if people at home are watching us, wondering why we're spending so many hours debating a temporary fence and questioning the more important things out there, like people who are facing an affordability with housing, lack of access to food, addictions and mental health crisis. And we've just spent 2 hours talking about a fence that, were it to come down today or tomorrow, would likely not affect the outcome of any sporting event. So far, I've heard tonight a lot of justification about it's visually not appealing. Well, it's hard to say this, but I'm going to say it. You don't own a view. Just, you don't own a view. So it's something where Councillor Tozo did steal my line. I had it prepped and everything, but yeah, we did build it and they did come. And that is something where it was of national importance. I have met over the many years that I've been on council with so many sports tourism advocates, with so many people who play sports. And one of the most difficult things they say is having ready, built to play facilities to host national and regional level events. It's not about, well, can you build it if we were to come or if you were to get it? It's, do you have it? Is it ready to go? Because that's what we're looking for, and that's what's going to make our shortlist. So with this, currently as it is, we make that shortlist. We will get more interest from this. We did host a very successful national event. The economic impact of that obviously plays huge dividends. Beyond that, we're facing an obesity epidemic amongst children, the likes of which we've never seen. And the one main thing is get them out there, get them active, find a sport, any sport, and just get them motivated and basically get them addicted to some type of sport in a healthy way to get them, off of video games and off the TV. So in the grand scheme of things, we know that the gate should be unlocked. I think that's a no-brainer. I think that's something where, let's even just consider removing the gates altogether. Let's increase the open field access to this in the grand scheme of things. There's lots of open space there. One of the things that seemed to come through, unfortunately, loud and clear from some of the delegations that were against this was it was not about the benefits of it. It was about what was being taken away from them. So if we take the gates out, we're no longer really taking away from anything. And it was kind of like having a huge open space and then fencing off a portion of it for a specific type of play. And somebody saw that as, well, we're losing something. And it's like, well, what about the 80% of all that? Well, it's not about that. It's about what we're losing over here. And I think that is really the wrong way. And it's a very small way of looking at this is don't look at what you're losing, look at what you're gaining. Look at the passion that went into this, the countless volunteer hours, the national level event that we hosted, the future events that we can host. And the fact that realistically, I think we've all supported in the past a motion that simply says, go out and have more talks about this. Don't make any knee-jerk reactions right now. Let's just continue the discourse. And at the end of the day, that's literally all this is asking. I don't see any hidden agenda in here. If the community decides a year from now to tear this down, fence post by fence post, I think we're all going to go, okay, well, the community decided that. But in the meantime, there's no harm in leaving it up. there's been a lot of effort put into this, and I think that this is, to kudos to Councillor Amos, this is a common sense. Let's have a discussion path forward before we bring in the bulldozers. And I think I just don't understand where the controversy is around this. It's not really asking for anything out in left field, to quote Councillor Tozo and numerous other baseball fanatics throughout the years, but this is just a common sense. Let's continue the discourse. It's not, Mayor Patterson said, it's not really costing us anything to leave this up. It's not taking anything away to just have this conversation. And we've all supported those motions in the past, so I don't see why this shouldn't go forward. I'm going to vote in favor of it. Thanks, Councillor Amos, for bringing it forward. Cheers.
Okay, thank you. Next is Councillor Sanik.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, I really wish that this Little League Baseball diamond was at some other park, because then we wouldn't be having this discussion. If it was at Woodbine Park or one of the others, I was going to support this motion up until I found out that we had an agreement with, Sydenham District Association in 2022 to bring down the fence. And to me, that changed everything. I even thought back then that it was just a verbal agreement. It was just tonight that I found out it was actually written in the Heritage Report. To me, that makes it very formal, and, it was a definite decision and an agreement back in 2022. And I think that our integrity as a council is kind of on the line here tonight. If we vote for this motion and direct staff to have discussions, I kind of think that we're setting staff up for failure, right? Because we can see tonight that the baseball people, and I have nothing against baseball, but the baseball players, they want the fence to remain. And then the Sydenham District Association, they want the fence to come down. So how's staff supposed to negotiate with that? And I think it comes down to, back in 2022, we have it in the Heritage Committee report that this temporary fence would come down at the end. And yep, if we do get the next year's championships, we can put the fence back up. But what's this saying to our public to negotiate with city council, with city staff? It's what's the point? Because the next council, or even the next year, we could all change our mind again. As soon as the motion, is finished and that 1 year lapse, we could change our mind. And I don't know, we have it's trust at stake here tonight. So I was going to support it until I found out that we had that commitment to Sydenham District. I remember the motion from 2022. I remember we put all the money towards the World Championships that we had, and it was very successful. What I didn't realize at the time was that the fence was coming down, and now it's been pointed out to me, and so I can't support the motion. Sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Rich.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship, and through you. So this has been a very fulsome discussion, and I really do appreciate everybody sharing their opinions and perspectives on this. There's a lot of things that have been mentioned already that I was planning on mentioning. We talked about the economic activity. We have downtown businesses have indicated that sales have been down 10 to 15% in comparison to the previous year, and that it's great to have people here visiting, playing sports, and bringing increased economic activity. We can talk about the costs of removing the fence and putting them back up, which seems to me to be mismanaging well-respected taxpayer dollars. But I want to talk about sports, because I used to play a lot of them. I was never very good at them, though, but I still tried. And I think that something that's being missed here, except for maybe unintentionally through Councillor Tozo's terrible puns, is that sports, especially when you're a child, sports are gold. And they're gold in a way that a lot of people, it's hard to say out loud. So I found a quote from Billie Jean King, who's a tennis player. Sorry, I looked for a baseball player, but I couldn't find one. Sports teaches you character It teaches you to play by the rules. It teaches you to know what it feels like to win and lose. It teaches you about life. And I think that we're all looking to strategically increase recreational activities for youth. We can point to January of this year when we were discussing the Icelandic model, encouraging youths to participate in recreational activities, including sports, to reduce opioid addiction in youths and children. But more fulsome than that, it brings communities to life and it builds character. And I want to be part of a council that's encouraging that. So I am in favor of this motion and hope everybody else supports it. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Deputy Mayor, would you take the chair?
Yes, I recognize you.
Thank you. So there's been lots that's been said on this issue, so I'm going to keep my comments pretty brief. Council has the right to change its mind. Council has changed their minds on many things over the years. Council used to think that the Wellington Street extension was absolutely something we were going to do, and we told everyone we were going to do it, and then you know what? New information came forward, new people sitting around the council table, and you know what? Council changed its mind. This happens all the time. The reason is that we're talking about public space. It belongs to everyone in our community. And so when new information comes forward, or new members of our community come forward with a different view, then it's okay to engage and say, okay, all right, this is public space. What's the best way to use that public space? I'll be honest with you, I like this motion just because it's not drawing conclusions. It's just saying, hey, you know what? There's a lot of people that have come forward and they have this view, and so we want to respect that view, and so let's bring everyone together and let's see if we can work out a compromise. If you vote against this motion, you're saying we don't even want to have those conversations to see if we can work out a compromise. I don't know what the end result of this is going to be. But I think it's incumbent on us as council to listen to everyone in our community, to recognize that there are different viewpoints, and let's find a forum where we can have that discussion and see if we can work something out. At the end of the day, right, that's our responsibility. That's why this city doesn't run on autopilot. And we just go with whatever was decided years before, because things change. Councillor Stevens said it well. Sometimes circumstances change. The context is different. Okay, so then we need to adapt to that. It's respectful, right? Everyone matters here. But let's have that conversation and let's see what options we can come up with. And you know what? I actually don't underestimate the abilities of our staff to work out some sort of creative solutions. At the end of the day, we'll see what options come forward and then we can decide from there. But I'm asking council to support this just because regardless of what your feelings are on this, let's have the conversation. I think we owe that to our community. Thank you.
I return to you.
Thank you. Next on my list is Councillor Shaves.
Thank you. First, I want to thank you as the Empire for calling out our fellow councillor for 4 foul puns. So that's the first thing I'm going to say. I was comment about council changing from previous council's decisions, but I think you said it quite well. Do we have a photo of past before and after pictures of the field? Because I know one thing that was just brought up was the field space and the availability of field space. So I guess the one before and the one after is the new one. But from what I can sort of see, ball eye, the space between the 2 ball diamonds, the green space is relatively the same. So I do believe there is sufficient space at this current time until the staff can come back with a report that any individual within the area, including the school, I'm not sure if the whole school comes out or not, is able to use that green space in that period of time. Not to mention, across the street, there's City Park, which also mentioned they have a mini soccer field there as well, with post. There was not and never has been any soccer post at that field. It was just a makeshift circle or rectangular to make a point as to where they were. And one of the speakers mentioned they use pylons, so it can be adjusted. I know I played off the cop sports. We just gather in the field, we use pylons, book backpacks or coats. So the field's still usable. My understanding, if staff could want to correct me, is this application came out quickly, and I think the public engagement wasn't given the full time it needed. And I think with this motion, it gives that time. Things have settled down, and we can discuss different issues. More things have come up, and maybe there's a better solution between keeping the fence and taking it down, something in between, which I think with these further discussions can come up. So staff can make presentations, and maybe there's actually a nice common ground between both parties. That's what engagement's for in public, in consultation. So we will not find that out if we don't vote for this motion, because we won't know what those decisions are. I say let it go through the process. Keeping the fence up at this period of time also secures safety issues. Things being found on the field that are not supposed to be, but even when during playing, reading some of the communications that we got, people will picnic in the outfield of the field. So someone hits a ball, it could land in their salad or whatever it may be. But if there's a field, there's actually a real line, which puts them outside of the danger area, and not to mention the players itself. There was also an issue in regards to, or a solution of collecting funds to put up and down the fence. That's a good thought, but it didn't work very well for Murney, which I believe is the name of our police horse, which the police department didn't have enough funding for. So the public had a campaign to fund, and I think it lasted a year, maybe two, then the funding ran out. So we can't guarantee there's always going to be the public funding to put up and down the fence. So I say we'll just see what the process is. I already mentioned about the vandalism. So yeah, so I'm going to sort of leave it there. I'm going to support this motion because we're not actually deciding anything at this time. We're letting the public engagement, some hopefully better engagement than we had back in 2022. And maybe we can come up with a better solution that's in the middle that will make everyone happier than they are now. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak that has not already spoken to the main motion? Okay, if not, then we will call the vote on, oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Amos, it is your motion, so you have the last word. If there's anything else you want to say.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. I'll say a few words. I want to touch a little bit on what Councillor Ridge had to say. He and I kind of grew up in the same neighborhood. Both inner city kids. I played baseball. I grew up in the neighborhood of the old Robert Meek Public School. In the summertime, you would see me with my bat, my ball, my uniform, my glove, and I would head down to City Park, or what I knew as City Park as cricket field. That old ball field that you saw, that's where I played. That ball field was horrible. Games would have to stop because people would be walking through it. You knew where there were certain divots that if you ran, you had a risk of breaking an ankle or whatever. It just was not a good field to begin with. When you see a field like this being developed, it's an amazing infrastructure. I wish I had the opportunity to play on that field. All of our youth deserve a great infrastructure to explore a new sport, build friendships, and be physically active. Why would we shoot ourselves in the foot by removing a key component of something that we spent so much time and money to build and with proven economic success? Let's move forward, have discussions, be open-minded on what this amazing ball diamond can better utilize for many youth as possible to play baseball and help our local economy. I hope you'll support this motion. Thanks.
Okay, so we will call the vote on new motion number 1. I believe everyone's system's working, so let's give it a try. Okay, all right. We will just put that aside again, and we'll revert back to hand votes for the rest of the meeting. Okay, so we'll call the vote on new motion number 1. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries by a vote of 10 to 3. Councillor Sanik, McLaren, and Glenn opposed.
Point of order. I voted for it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councillor Osterhoff, Osanik, and Glenn. Thank you, Councillor McLaren. Okay. All right, so with that, we have now dealt with new motion number 1. Thank you. So now we will continue with the rest of our agenda. The gallery is, of course, welcome to stay for the rest of the exciting items that we have on our agenda, but if you wish to leave, that's fine as well. Okay. So, moving back to report number, I'll take 5 minutes. Okay, we'll see. Report number 76 from the CAO.
Moved by Councillor Chinani, seconded by Councillor Ridge, that Report 76 from the Chief Administrative Officer consent be received and adopted.
Okay, so there's just the one clause, proposal to name a proposed private road, David Peach Lane. Councillor Shaves?
Okay, I want to say this in a general aspect, not specific to this motion, but generally in regards to this motion. I just generally have issues naming anything after a person. Place, thing, fine, but we've had issues in the past and sort of other cities with history coming up and there being controversy. I'm not saying this could be the case in this point. So just on that basis alone, I'm not going to be supporting this motion.
Okay. We'll call the vote on clause 1. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries by a vote of 10 to 3. Councillor Hassan, Osterhoff, and Shaves opposed. Okay, on to report number 77 from the CAO.
Moved by Councillor Stevens, seconded by Councillor Tozo, that Report 77 from the Chief Administrative Officer recommend be received and adopted clause by clause.
Okay, so our first clause, we will now have a briefing from Jamie Cook and Eric Carvinen from Watson & Associates regarding the employment area lands review.
Good evening, Mayor Patterson, members of council, and city staff. It's a pleasure to be back before you tonight to talk to you about the key findings of our employment area lands review. If we can go to the first slide. So just in terms of an introduction, oh, sorry, I guess I'm doing the slides. So this is the third study of 4 big reports that have been coming forward to council as part of a larger growth analysis and urban land needs study that our firm is doing as background to the official plan review for the city. And so this study we're talking about tonight is the Employment Area Land Needs Review. It's a key foundational study that forms a background document with respect to the long-term land needs for the city's urban employment area lands, as well as respect to the management of the city's employment areas to the year 2051. And so a key deliverable of the study as well is to provide key policy directions with respect to the management of the city's long-term employment areas within the context of an evolving employment market with respect to a diverse and ever-increasing diversity of industrial and commercial land needs within an evolving provincial policy framework. So last time we spoke in August about the city's residential land needs. Looking at this map here is a map of the city's urban structure. Tonight we're going to be talking about the city's employment areas. So this is all the areas that you see here on the map that are in the dark blue. So these are areas that are going to be accommodating currently do accommodate industrial development and are planned to accommodate industrial development. We're also going to be talking about the need for additional employment areas beyond the city's urban boundary within the lands that are currently designated for rural land use. So I'm going to turn over to Eric. He's going to walk through the detailed core findings of the study.
Thanks, Jamie.
So as part of our employment area land needs review, we prepared a growth outlook that looked at employment growth out to the year 2051. We looked at ultimately how that would impact employment area land demand and land needs in the city over that planning horizon. Considering land demand and supply considerations, we've concluded that the city will have a shortfall of employment area lands totaling 405 gross hectares of land to accommodate growth through 2051. So with this land need of just around approximately 400 gross hectares, we anticipate that about 325 hectares of that will be needed for primarily industrial uses, including manufacturing, transportation, distribution, logistics, and construction type sectors. We also anticipate that of that 405 gross hectares of land, about 80 hectares will be needed to accommodate other employment uses, including office, research and development, knowledge-based sectors, and other innovative sectors that are important for the city's economic vibrancy. So with the shortfall of 400 gross hectares, there will need to be, through the official plan review project, an exploration of potential expansion areas of the city to accommodate these future designated employment lands. These will be looked at in more detail, and the exact urban land needs may differ from the metrics identified through this study here. So as part of the employment area lands review, we prepared a range of strategic directions and policy recommendations to help inform the city's official plan review project. And so I'm going to present some of the key findings in these slides. First is the importance to recognize that we need to plan for employment uses in Kingston in the context of an evolving economy. We're experiencing significant structural changes, economic disruptors, agents of change, and the OP policies really need to anticipate this evolving nature of the local and regional economy and reflect the diverse needs of industry and businesses of all sizes, large and small, over the longer term. It's important that the City of Kingston maintain its current separate designations of business, park, industrial, and general industrial designated lands to help inform and delineate employment area lands planning in the city. These separate designations reflect the distinct intents and needs of those areas to accommodate a range of light, medium, and heavier industrial uses. It's important as well that the OP prioritize the development of complete and comprehensive transportation systems to allow for access to these employment areas beyond just auto-related functions, including public transit, cycle, and pedestrian opportunities and access as well. One important consideration in our study was the new 2024 provincial planning statement, which was just issued last month in August, and now we need to plan for employment uses within the context of a more narrow definition of how employment areas are defined by the province. Essentially, employment areas are now to be limited to uses that are primarily industrial in nature. So as part of the updating of the official plan, it's recommended that the city review all of its existing employment lands sites and identify those that align with this new definition and group those sites together into a separate employment category or add it as a separate overlay in the OP, which clearly identifies these sites as aligning with the new PPS definition for employment areas. Equally importantly, it's important for the city to identify all other employment lands. They are also very important to the city because they do accommodate other employment uses, and it's important for the city to maintain and protect those lands as well. Speaking of protecting employment areas, it's important to protect employment areas as they offer opportunities to accommodate industrial and in other employment uses that cannot be easily accommodated in other areas of the community. As such, it's recommended that the official plan policies that are currently in the city's OP are maintained as they relate to the protection of employment lands, and this should apply to all employment area lands moving forward. The City of Kingston has a very large and diverse developed employment lands base, but it also includes a number of underutilized lands totaling about 150 hectares. It's important to utilize these lands better over the planning horizon through intensification efforts. The city should prioritize the intensification and efficient use of these existing employment area lands over time. There should be policies in place to encourage the redevelopment and upgrading of employment area lands that are underutilized to accommodate new industrial activities. The city should also explore and monitor opportunities for infill and redevelopment in these more mature employment areas. There's also opportunities for the city to encourage the adaptive reuse of existing industrial buildings to accommodate new industry sectors. As mentioned, the city has a deficit of employment area land over the planning horizon. As such, the city will need to strategically plan for new employment areas to the year 2051. As such, it's recommended that the city explore options for expansion to accommodate the roughly 400 gross hectares of land that's needed. The city should also regularly monitor employment land absorption and employment density levels to see how it's tracking to the forecast that we've identified. The city should also strive to maintain at all times a 5-year supply of serviced and ready-to-develop employment lands to be competitive in the marketplace and provide for market choice for industry. The city should also explore phasing policies for these new expansion areas that align with community area settlement expansion areas, so there's synergies in planning for future growth areas. The City of Kingston has historically been a strong and a successful developer of employment lands, and this municipal role is expected to continue well into the future. This is a critical role that the city undertakes, and we see that continuing over the planning horizon. The city should, however, continue to establish policies that promote public-private partnerships when developing infrastructure in new employment areas and new industrial projects. The city should also consider policies that implement fast-track approval processes for industrial projects, such as utilizing and implementing a community planning permitting system to help streamline and expedite development projects. Finally, the importance of climate mitigation, adaptation, and resiliency principles is critical. The city, through its OP policies, should continue to guide and encourage energy efficient and climate resilient development for all employment areas, including developing policies to ensure industrial development considers long-term greenhouse gas emission reduction targets, encouraging compact and transit supportive employment areas development, promote efficient industrial clusters, and explore opportunities to attract investment in renewable energy systems such as geothermal and district energy within employment areas, and finally, to develop new employment areas with green infrastructure practices. And that concludes our presentation.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councillor Tozo.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson, through you. I know it's late, so I'm going to be brief about this. We're predicting out to 25 years down the road of what our needs will be, and we're talking about expanding the urban boundary, which of course carries with a whole bunch of problems. Your firm, and I'm just curious about this, what's your track record on making these kinds of long-term predictions? I agree we need to prepare, but I also want to make sure that we've gotten a lot of feedback about expanding the urban boundary, and I share some of the reluctance of our community about doing so. This is an ask to expand it and prepare for it. what's like the history of your predictive record of making these kinds of predictions of what's needed for urban growth? I'm just looking for a little bit of background into that. And I remember I asked about comparators previously, so I'm just curious a bit about the record there.
Sure, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. It's a little bit of a trickier one to maybe answer from last time, but I can say that when it comes to long-term projections, we're typically in that range of about a 5% range when we go out about 10 years, 10 to 15 years, and then that gets a little bit wider as you get further out, which is sort of the reason why we have these ranges in our long-term projections for growth. When it comes to employment, it can be a bit more challenging. Employment's harder to project. We're going to go through periods of contraction, expansion. But we do have a pretty good track record of trying to, understand absorption trends and project those trends forward. We've got a good track record of looking at densities and projecting where densities are heading in employment areas. And similar to the community area, to the residential discussion, we've done these studies all across Ontario and throughout Canada. And I would say that this is not a small amount of land that we're talking. We're talking about 400 hectares, but it's not in the big fields of numbers that you might see in a large GTA municipality. But this is a big number. So it does fall within that I think appropriately sized amount of land that you might find in a mid-sized city in Canada. I think there's a need to be looking at proper phasing policies as well as we go forward to ensure that we're servicing and phasing and ensuring these lands are provided in an orderly manner, just like we're going to be doing with the community area side. So I think that's probably the best I can answer that.
Okay. Councillor Senek.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, when you had one paragraph in your report that talked about sensitive environmental lands, and you said that you're not recommending where to move the urban boundary to, but you mentioned, there's has to be appreciation for an updated natural heritage system, if there's going to be industrial lands around there. And I see in your Exhibit A map, right, you show industrial areas around some of our major creek systems like Little Cataraqui Creek. So I just wondered, what cities do you see where they have done employment lands and done a good job with protecting natural heritage systems while developing employment lands around that natural heritage system?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So the map you're referring to references currently designated employment area lands in the city. Obviously, as part of any expansion, the quantum of need that we've identified would be explored through the official plan review project process, and ultimately, environmentally sensitive lands would be considered as part of that when considering location options. So we have not looked at those as part of the employment area lands review. We would leave that for the official plan review process to consider. As far as communities that have been quite progressive in this area, one city that is very similar in size to Kingston that comes to mind is the city of Guelph. So they have a very well-established employment lands inventory and base, and they have been very sustainably expanding their employment lands to accommodate future growth in industry. The Hanlon Creek Business Park is one of their key projects. It's a public-private partnership, and there was extensive work done to make sure that it was developed in an environmentally sustainable manner, and certainly, those sorts of natural heritage features were considered, and were obviously not, non-developable areas that were excluded from designated employment uses.
Thank you. Thanks for giving Guelph as an example. My second question is, often we see we'll develop a business park, but then instead of getting a lot of businesses, we end up getting retail. We get bars, and nothing against bars, but our business parks are supposed to be, for, like you said, right, manufacturing, right, all those different types of uses you gave, not retail. I know that sometimes you come and you give us an update on our retail capacity in Kingston. So how can we, or it will be even stores in our business parks. So when you talked about policies, will you actually be helping staff develop those policies that can prevent our business parks from just turning into another strip mall?
Certainly, your comment and question is well taken. Certainly, one of the advantages of the new PPS that I mentioned from the province is that for employment areas are really intended for industrial uses, and the focus should be on that and certainly not on retail. So that in itself will help the city sort of guide and inform the type of development that will be accommodated within employment areas, and certainly prohibit retail type uses. For other employment lands in the city that are really intended for more of that innovation economy, office and research and development type uses that I mentioned, that's really important for those knowledge-based jobs that you're also attracting, and those need a home as well. But certainly we recognize through the work that we've collectively undertaken in this growth study that there are needs for retail commercial uses to serve the population and the growing population, but there are obviously opportunities to accommodate that within community areas and not within employment area lands.
Thank you.
Councillor Ostroff.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. Thanks for the report. And just wanted to ask, when the provincial policy spoke about only industrial focus, are you able to explain the rationale behind that and why it would seem to handcuff a lot of municipalities, and why wouldn't they allow us to be a little more creative can you speak into that at all and understanding why the government would do that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'll take a stab at starting to respond to that. So, as you know, the province's mandate is primarily about providing more housing in Ontario, and so a lot of what I personally and I think professionally, what you see in the PPS is a document that's really driven to really try to achieve that ultimate goal. Not to say that they're not trying to provide complete communities, because there are policies in the PPS with respect to complete communities, but one of the with that objective of unlocking housing and ultimately unlocking housing in some cases it could be areas around higher order transit. Some of those areas may be areas that are currently where there's some industrial development, so there's opportunities to relook at those areas to provide more density. It's very hard to achieve very high densities in areas that provide industrial development. So that's sort of one aspect of it. I think the other aspect is they're lost my train of thought a little bit here, but sorry, I've lost it, but.
Is there
sorry,
freedom?
I'll come back to it.
Yeah.
Sorry, did you have a question?
Well, sorry, I was trying to help you.
Yeah, sorry, help me.
Is there freedom? Is there some creativity allowed within there? It just seems binding to me, because we just finished an economic strategic plan with our with ECDAV, and we dreamed the dream of what we're actually good at, and industry isn't necessarily there, so we almost have to redo what we just did. But I think that when we think about transportation, our location, geographically, there's a lot of things that we keyed in on, and I'm wondering if you read that and were you able to, dovetail some of it into what we want to do.
Yeah, I'll just maybe finish up my thought. Maybe, and Eric might speak to some more of the specifics on the policy. But I think there's just been a real clear focus for the province to try to provide a real distinction between areas that are accommodating industrial and areas that are not. So we have this map that we showed that these are areas that are community areas, these are areas that are employment, and that blurring of the lines, I think, does I think does pose some challenges in terms of how are you defining what an employment area is, and I think the province has taken a more rigid approach to that, to really take an approach of these are areas where we're accommodating industrial development, and keep in mind some supporting uses that are ancillary or accessory to those subordinate uses, but really trying to discourage again, freestanding uses that are non-industrial in nature, because again, I think where I was going with that other point is they're trying to focus those other non-industrial uses, like the office uses, major office uses, to areas where we can accommodate high clusters of density, typically around transit-oriented locations like higher to transit or other areas that are highly dense. There's clearly some shortfalls to this policy because of really the two aspects that I think really fall out of this that are challenging are, one, how to accommodate these knowledge-based uses that are, in our mind, really employment generating uses, like your Alcan Business Park, for example, that wouldn't be necessarily an area that's industrial in nature. And there's also the challenge of these lower order non-industrial, non-commercial uses like auto repair or some of the other types of non-commercial uses you might see in an area like the old industrial business park. Where do those lands go? So what we've tried to do is develop policies in this report to help address some of the maybe unintended consequences of this policy direction, to recognize the province's direction, but also recognize the uniqueness of the city and the city's local policies and how those policies are designed to protect and enhance these areas of innovation that may not fit the mold of the province. So I don't know, Eric, if you didn't think further on that.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I also point to page 12, which you did, as I represent the rural area, so I do appreciate including some of the ideas of the proximity to the 401. I've been pointing to that for years, and hopefully we can do something with that as well. I wanted to ask about, did I miss the map related to the existing underused areas in the city? I appreciated that because I think everybody points to that, and we'd love to find ways of developing the underused areas. So I would, if you want to speak to that again, but I would like to know, is there a map that shows that or not? Did I miss it?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. There is no map as such in the report. It's more of a qualitative and sort of a qualitative discussion on underutilized lands.
Okay, I think we do. I think that's something we could do, but thank you for that. And a hectare is 3 acres, is it? 2.47. I knew it was, okay. And thank you.
Commissioner Agnew.
Thank you, and through you, just to add to the commentary, Councillor, I want to assure Council that there is a change in the provincial policy, there is a change in the definition. In terms of trying to understand the motivations, I would say the motivations primarily were also to provide municipalities with additional flexibility relative to the changing market. Certainly there's a level of protection that's afforded to what's considered employment versus other uses, but those other uses are accommodated in different land use designations. They just don't have the same primacy or priority of protection as they would have once been afforded under the Planning Act. So if anything, it's given municipalities more flexibility, I believe intentionally, to allow for economic change, things happening within the marketplace, and then some less restriction on some of those uses, but also to Mr. Cook's point, making sure that municipalities are adequately protecting for some of those larger industrial uses, particularly with we've seen with the proliferation of manufacturing returning to North America and some of those employment trends that we see. So I think it's a balance between the two, but I don't want council to feel concerned that some of the other uses that have been specifically identified as part of the rural economic development strategy are no longer able to be protected or given a level of employment use. They'll just be called a different designation under our official plan, but still be prioritized as needed areas relative to filling their places within the market.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, gentlemen, thank you both very much. So with that, we will move to Clause 2, Employment Area Lands Review. Councillor Rich.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple quick questions for staff, which we had a delegation earlier, so I'll ask Mary's questions. Can staff comment on Collins Bay being available for housing or for land employment? Is there any updates or information about that?
CEO Hurdle.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Mayor. So we do have conversations, I would say quite regularly, with the MP's office in terms of properties that may be available or that the city could possibly access. This one has not been a property identified by the federal government at this point in terms of potential disposition, and to our knowledge, there is no plan at this point for this property.
Thank you, and through you, Your Worship. Is it possible to add future locations to the employment lands classification as they become available? So, for example, if Collins Bay were to later be available from the federal government, would that be an option?
Commissioner Agnew.
Thank you, and through you. The city has the ability to amend its official plan at any point in the future. So certainly if there was land that became available and we needed to convert it from one type of land use to another, we would be able to do that, take it through the public process. So there's no fear the land's not available now, as CEO Hurdle has indicated. Certainly we do have those conversations. We'll continue to consult with the federal government at their willingness relative to the official plan process that's going to unfold over the next 18 months. And certainly if it becomes available outside of that window, then we would always work to accordingly bring it in and assign it an appropriate land use designation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Amos.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. I'll be very quick. Just from a long-time Kingston observation, the 401 seems to be that magic barrier that the city just won't go past or through or around or under. And I'm just wondering, in this 25-year plan, it's not a fence. It's a road. Move on. I'm wondering, in this 25-year plan, I mean, we've gone decades now with no possible avenue of moving forward past the 401. Is our infrastructure so limited in our ability to look at employment lands just on the other side of the 401? Is it that limited that it's just not conceivable even in the next 25 years?
Commissioner Agnew.
Thank you, and through you. So I would say there's still a lot of analysis to do. We do know from work that's been done in the past that it's incredibly expensive, and we would have to think about that relative to the investment and the economic return. But what is good relative to the evolution of planning policy in the province that's happened under the new PPS is that there are considerations or greater consideration for communal servicing or private servicing of rural lands relative to business uses compared to what we've seen in the past. So I think there's strategies that we have to look at how we can encourage that development, even just north of the 401, but on communal services or different systems other than being on full municipal services. We'll certainly be looking at all of the water, wastewater, hydro infrastructure as part of the evaluation of the 25-year plan. But what we're seeing right now is that we have land available that's more contiguous versus having to go under or over the 401. But certainly it's never completely off the table, but the logistics and the expense are quite considerable. So we're looking at other alternatives to support development in those areas.
Okay. Councillor Senek.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not going to move an amendment, but I will explain that I don't like the word endorse. So, you know, how the last council meeting, right? I would rather have seen the word receive, and I don't believe in expanding the urban boundary out either. You know, StarTech, we were with this with StarTech, and now StarTech doesn't exist. They tore the building down. Life cycle, you know, the lands are empty. Assurance, the building is up for lease. So I'm voting against this. Thank you.
Okay.
We will call the vote then on Clause 2. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries by a vote of 12 to 1. Councillor Sanik opposed. Okay, Clause 3, Amendment to Development Charges Bylaw to extend effective term. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Clause 4, Housing Accelerator Fund Update. Councillor Tozo.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson, through you. I just want to highlight the excellent work of city staff of this budget and the extra amount of money that we're getting for affordable housing. I mused via Messenger that we spent 2 hours debating a fence in a field, and we're allocating probably unanimously $3.6 million to a $20 million budget on affordable housing. I hear from the community we're not doing enough. For the people, the 3 or 4 people watching at home still after this last debate, $20 million in our 2024 budget funded through CMHC's Housing Accelerator Fund. This is absolutely impressive and great work for all of us. We are taking the housing crisis very seriously. Thank you.
Great. Okay, we'll call the vote on Clause 4. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Okay, under report number 78 from the Kingston Heritage Properties Committee.
Moved by Councillor Glenn, seconded by Councillor Osterhoff, that report 78 from the Kingston Heritage Properties Committee be received and adopted.
Would anyone like any of the items in this report separated? If not, we'll vote on them as a whole. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Okay, on to report number 79 from the Arts, Recreation, and Community Policies Committee.
Moved by Councillor Shave, seconded by Councillor Amos, that report 79 from the Arts, Recreation, and Community Policies Committee be received and adopted.
Okay, there's just the one clause, Community Garden Policy Update. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Okay, we have nothing from Committee of the Whole. We have no information reports. Miscellaneous business, we have one motion. Moved by Councillor McLaren, seconded by Councillor Stephen, that is requested by Bonnie Sparrow, Home Children Canada. Kingston City Council proclaims September 28th, 2024 to be National British Home Child Day in the City of Kingston. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. We've already discussed new motion number 1. Are there any notices of motion? If not, Madam Clerk, I'll ask for minutes, please.
Moved by Deputy Mayor Hassan, seconded by Councillor Ridge, that the minutes of City Council Meeting 19, 2024, held Tuesday, August 13th, 2024, be confirmed.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. We have some tabling of documents, a number of communications. Is there any other business? Councillor Tozo?
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. Through you, I'll be brief and I won't use any baseball puns. That should keep everybody happy. I'd like just to highlight 2 groups this past Monday. Kingston and District Labor Council for hosting Labor Day in McBurney Park. They did an excellent job. There was a lot of great speakers and a lot of great events and booths. It was great to see a few other councillors there. And I'd also like to highlight the community event held at Lake Ontario Park by our MP and MPP, Mark Gerritsen and Ted Shue. I know several councillors also helped out there with delivering pizzas. Councillor Hassan, Councillor Shaves, and Councillor Chinani. Great work. I will highlight, though, that the Labor Day one in McBurney Park did have an Elvis impersonator. So, Ann Parker, the ball is in your court. Although the singers at the Lake Ontario Park were amazing. So great job at celebrating the contributions Labor continue to make to our great city and our great country. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if there's no other business, Madam Clerk, press your bylaws, please.
Moved by Councillor Osterhoff, seconded by Councillor Stephen, that bylaws 1 through 9 and 13 be given their first and second reading.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried.
Moved by Councillor Osterhoff, seconded by Councillor Stephen, that bylaws 1 and 3 through 13 be given their third reading.
All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor Ridge, seconded by Councillor Shaves. All those in favor? Opposed? And we're adjourned. Thanks very much.